Excellency Talib Kucukan, Ambassador of Turkey, Sheikh Dr. Salur Al-Hussein, the Supreme Islamic Council of Australia, and Dr. Robi Nurhadi, Conference Chair. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, dan seluruh sivitas akademika Universitas Nasional. Profesor Kishore Mahbubani, former United Nations Security Council. He said, in US, every presentation starts with a joke. So I will start with a joke as well. Ladies and gentlemen, once upon a time there was a man named Unbelievable. Mr. Unbelievable married with very beautiful young lady, and they become the very happy couple. One day, Mr. Unbelievable gets sick, and he called his wife, "Darling, please promise me, if I die, don't put my name in my graveyard. Enough is enough. I got that very idiotic name since I was born until I die. So after I die, I don't like anybody know me with that very idiotic name." His wife agreed. Unbelievable died, and his wife put the word in the graveyard like this: "Rest in peace, the faithful husband who never betrayed his wife." And what happened afterward? Everybody who passing by the graveyard and look at the word "rest in peace, faithful husband who never betrayed his wife," all of them get the same response. All of them said, "Wow, unbelievable." Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, before we speak about peace and diplomacy, allow me to begin with a reflection on technology, the very force that has transformed our world beyond recognition. In the past few decades, the pace of technological advancement has been nothing short of revolutionary. Artificial intelligence, hypersonic weapons, unmanned systems, and space-based surveillance have fundamentally reshaped how nations perceive power and security. Among all domains of modern warfare, land, sea, air, space, and cyber, it is an air power that has emerged as the most decisive instrument of national strength. Air power provides not only speed, reach, and precision, but also the ability to project influence without borders. Recognizing this growing dominance of air and space in the strategic environment, in 2019, I, with my friend, founded the Indonesia Center for Air Power Studies, a platform where practitioners, scholars, and policymakers in the airspace community could come together. The vision was simple yet profound: to build a think tank dedicated to advancing the understanding of air and space power, not merely as tools of defense, but as instruments of diplomacy, technological progress, and national identity. Through this forum, we aim to bridge the gap between operational experience and academic thought, between the cockpit and the classroom, so that Indonesia's approach to national security evolve in step with the challenges of the modern world. And it is this perspective at the intersection of defense, technology, and diplomacy that I wish to share today's reflection: the role of military leadership in fostering peace. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends, it is a privilege to stand before you today to share thoughts on a theme that lies at the very heart of humanity's future, from defense to diplomacy, the role of military leadership in fostering peace. For centuries, the military has been viewed through the lens of power projection, of defending borders, deterring threats, and when necessary, fighting wars. Yet in the 21st century, as the lines between war and peace blur, the role of military leadership must evolve. The most enlightened generals of our time understand that the ultimate victory is not the defeat of an enemy, but the prevention of conflict itself. Traditionally, defense means protecting sovereignty by force, by building armies, acquiring weapons, and maintaining readiness. But today, defense extends far beyond the battlefield. It is about safeguarding not just territory, but values, stability, and human dignity. Modern military leadership recognizes that security is no longer defined solely by firepower, but by resilience, the capacity of nations to adapt, cooperate, and maintain order amid uncertainty. Climate change, pandemic, cyber attack, and disinformation campaigns are all threats that cannot be confronted by missiles or fighter jets alone. Thus, the mindset of defense must shift from confrontation to cooperation, from deterrence to dialogue. The transformation doesn't weaken our armed forces, it elevates their mission. Ladies and gentlemen, true military leadership has always transcended tactics. It is about character, wisdom, and vision. The most powerful generals are not those who command the largest armies, but those who can command trust, both at home and abroad. And General Dwight Eisenhower, before becoming US President, said, "Peace and security can never be achieved by the sword alone. The real problem is not the weapons, but the heart of man." In that sense, leadership in uniform carries a moral dimension. It requires the ability to understand the psychology of both allies and adversaries, to manage fear without surrendering compassion, and to exercise restraint even when possessing overwhelming power. Military leaders today often serve as bridge builders, mediating between ministers, between soldiers and civilians, and increasingly between nations. Their conduct on the international stage through joint exercises, humanitarian mission, and peacekeeping sends powerful messages about the kind of world they wish to build. We live in an era where the military uniform has become a tool not only of deterrence but of diplomacy. This is evident in international peacekeeping under the United Nations, in regional defense dialogue like ADMM+, and in humanitarian assistance during natural disasters. When a C-130 aircraft brings medical aid to a disaster zone, or when the naval vessel conducts joint search and rescue with a neighboring country, that is diplomacy in action. It is defense serving peace. Such gesture build trust, but most valuable currency in international religion. Military diplomacy is thus the art of communicating strength through cooperation, not coercion. But diplomacy through defense cannot succeed without a deep ethical foundation. Power must be guided by responsibility. Technology must be balanced with humanity. Military leaders must understand that every decision, whether to deploy, to strike, or to stand down, has political and moral consequences. In a world of nuclear deterrence and hypersonic weapon, restraint becomes the highest form of wisdom. Leadership, therefore, means being able to say no when the easier answer is yes. It means understanding that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice. And justice can only emerge when those who hold the instrument of war are guided by conscience. To move from defense to diplomacy, we must also rethink how we educate our future leaders. Military academies and staff colleagues should not only teach strategy and tactics, but also ethics, history, psychology, and international relations. Officers must be trained not just to win wars, but to avoid them. We must also train our officers to become balanced individuals, developing both the analytical strength of the left brain and the creative empathy of the right. Only through such balance can they combine discipline with imagination, logic with intuition, and command with compassion. The education of an officer must go beyond producing skilled professionals. It must forge officers and gentlemen, men and women of honor who embody integrity, courage, humility, and a deep sense of responsibility. Strategic culture should emphasize dialogue as a strength, not a weakness. Indeed, the most advanced Air Force or Navy is meaningless without a culture of integrity, discipline, and understanding of the human condition. A strong defense establishment that understands diplomacy becomes a pillar of stability. A weak defense system, even if well armed, becomes a source of insecurity. Ladies and gentlemen, history teaches us that wars are often started by misunderstanding and ended by communication. The evolution from defense to diplomacy is not a choice between strength and peace. It is the recognition that true strength lies in the ability to create peace before the first shot is fired. Military leaders must become the new diplomat of the 21st century, guardians not only of borders, but of trust, dialogue, and hope. Their leadership, guided by wisdom and compassion, can transform the instrument of war into instrument of peace. As we face the turbulence of our age, from geopolitical rivalries to technological disruption, let us remember that the future of humanity depends not on who has the mightiest army, but on who has the greatest moral courage to lead toward peace. In the end, the finest generals will not be remembered for the wars they fought, but for the peace they made possible. Ladies and gentlemen, again, history reminds us that the war is often born not from hatred, but from the failure of understanding. True strength, therefore, is not measured by a number of victories on the battlefield, by the courage to prevent the next one. Moving from defense to diplomacy is not a retreat from power, it is the highest expression of it. It is the strength to control aggression with wisdom, to replace suspicion with dialogue, and to turn national pride into shared pursuit of stability. The military leaders of this century must embody this new vision of power, one that protects not only borders, but also the fragile trust among nations. Through integrity, empathy, and foresight, they must become architects to peace in a world where technology can destroy as quickly as it can connect. The true legacy of a soldier, after all, will not be written in the smoke of war, but in the quiet endurance of peace that follows. Yet, as we stand in this rapidly changing world, one filled with rising geopolitical tension, economic rivalries, and unpredictable consequences of technological escalation, it is time for all of us to open our eyes wider. Security can no longer be seen merely as the strength of our arsenal, but as the resilience of our humanity. Let us cultivate the sincerity to look deeper into what security truly means, not only for our nation, but for our shared future on this fragile planet. We must act now, guided by a genuine intention to preserve peace.